Where does antibiotic resistance actually come from, originally? Okay, and it's not what you think, probably. Let's go back to that first drug, penicillin, again. It was discovered by accident by Alexander Fleming. He didn't invent penicillin. A fungus landed in his petri dish and started killing all the bacteria there. The fungus invented penicillin. And it probably did so millions and millions of years ago, during which time the bacteria it kills most likely co-evolved resistances against it. So it's no surprise that just a few years after he discovered penicillin, and before any person had ever gotten that drug, Fleming's team found bacteria already resistant to it. Okay? So resistance is already there. And in a landmark study in 2006, scientists showed this is true for all drugs. They looked at soil-dwelling bacteria, not disease-causing bacteria, just harmless bacteria in the soil, and they found that these soil-dwelling bacteria had all the genetic toolkit they needed to resist every drug known to man. And probably every drug we'll ever discover in the future. They already are resistant to it. So what that means is, if we want to protect human health, we got to think about the farm. Farms are critically important to our health. And unfortunately, a modern farming system is creating the perfect sort of laboratory for resistance to arise. Why? Because livestock, you may not know this, they are continuously fed low doses of antibiotics. Not because they're sick, but because somehow it makes them grow faster and fatter. No one knows how this works to this day. No one understands it, but it works. You feed your pigs or your any other chickens this in their water and in their feed. You give them antibiotics. They get like twice as big. Okay? That's good for profits, but it's bad for us, because what it means is that these animals are becoming sick with diseases that are resistant. This has implications for our health. Scientists recently discovered a strain of MRSA that they could show we had pigs to thank for. Okay, so it started as an easily treated version of staph, and then we infected a pig somewhere. And while the disease was in pigs, it acquired resistance, and then it jumped back to reinfect people. But I want to focus on this pig, okay? Because remember, that pig is sick as well, and what happens to the bacteria in him? It goes to the grocery store. Now, a team of scientists went around Iowa City and they sampled the grocery stores, and they found that 5% of all the grocery carts had MRSA on them, while 3% of all meat harbored MRSA inside them. While interestingly, none of the so-called antibiotic-free meat had MRSA. This is from animals raised without antibiotics. So if there's one thing you take away from this talk, let it be to demand antibiotic-free meat. That way, if you get sick from undercooked meat, at least you won't have a superbug. Okay? And just so you know, that's the label. That's the label to look for. Process verified is the best label we've got. So to recap the progress in terms of understanding the problem. Resistance is already here. It's in the soil. The farm is our first line of defense. Okay? But what happens if the genes that give resistance escape the farm and make it into bacteria that cause human disease? The good news is that the battle is not yet lost, because actually our bodies are a battlefield. Different strains of the same disease are actually competing with each other for supremacy. The life and death struggle is not with us, it's between them. So actually the susceptible versions, the versions that we can kill with our drugs, are our allies in the fight against the resistant ones. If we can find a way to give the susceptible ones an advantage, we can let them do the dirty work and drive the resistant bacteria to extinction. So just to illustrate that, imagine they did have an advantage for some reason. We would maybe start with a person infected with a mix, an equal mix of susceptible and resistant. S means susceptible, R resistant. But then when they infect someone else, it'll be mostly susceptible. And eventually, there'll be no resistant bacteria at all. Hey, of course, these people are sick, so that's not ideal. We recognize they're sick and we give them a drug. Okay, now what does that drug do? It changes the game the bacteria are playing by wiping out the susceptible. And you've gotten rid of the competition. You've given the resistant ones an open field, and now everyone's sick with completely resistant disease. Okay, so that's the way we're changing the game right now, and that's why we need to be careful about how we use antibiotics. So the second key game changer is that we need to be more careful in how we use antibiotics. And our public health officials are pushing on this. They have a whole campaign called the Get Smart campaign with a lot of valuable information about when antibiotics work. So that's clearly important, but all we can do with this sort of approach is to slow the rise of resistance by reducing the advantage that resistant bacteria have. To change the game in a more profound way, we got to think outside the box. So imagine this. What if it were possible, when a patient came to the doctor, to look inside their body and see what type of bacteria they had? Now, if all of those were S's, okay, the patient only had susceptible bacteria, we give them the standard treatment, it's going to work great. But if the patient has any R's in there at all, we'll know the standard treatment is not appropriate. We can give the best available alternative treatment and take extra steps to disrupt transmission, the most extreme of which is complete isolation. Now, if we did completely isolate the patient, what would happen? We would completely stop the resistant bacteria in its tracks. Now, only the susceptibles are left, and we are controlling them as effectively as we can. Okay, so this gives an advantage to the susceptible ones, literally can drive the resistant ones to extinction. Now, the key to this, obviously, is the ability to detect. Okay, and I mentioned we have these tests, but these old-fashioned tests take days. Okay, but here's the amazing great news. In recent years, new type of test has been developed. It's referred to as molecular diagnostics. And the way it works is you put a sample in it that has the bacteria in it, and it will, and I'm simplifying here, read the genes of the bacteria, and if it finds a sequence of genes that we know confers resistance, it will then say, hey, the person has resistant disease. Okay? If you don't have those gene sequences, then your bacteria is susceptible. This thing only takes 1 hour. Okay? Right now, such tests are only available for a small handful of disease conditions. However, scientists have been busily cataloging the entire, well, they call it the resistomes. You know the genome? The resistome, all of the gene sequences that correspond to resistance. And here's a visualization of it. Okay? All the drugs we use to treat patients, these are the gene sequences that give resistance. So in principle, we could have a test like this for every disease and every drug we use to treat it. Imagine what that would mean for you. You go to the doctor, they run a test that can be done in an hour, they know exactly what drugs to give you. That's great news for you, right? You get the best possible treatment. But it's fantastic news for humanity. Because what it means is we can recognize when a patient has a resistant bacteria and take extra steps to disrupt transmission and put the resistant bacteria on the path to extinction. So wherever that resistant bacteria pops up, we can whack it down. We can preserve drugs, not just for years or decades, but literally forever. That said, the battle is not won. We have to act fast enough. If the resistant bacteria take over and kill all the susceptible ones first, we won't be able to do anything. We'll be living in a post-antibiotic world. Our only hope is to take these steps before the resistant bacteria win.